Hello everyone and welcome back to Talkerstory class. Today, we are asking a very specific question. Why are Western pharmaceutical giants, the biggest drug companies in the world, suddenly rushing to patent African traditional medicine? When I say African traditional medicine, or ATM for short, I don't want you to picture just magic spells or superstition. While there is a spiritual component for many cultures, at its core, traditional medicine is essentially thousands of years of trial and error scientific research. It is knowledge passed down through oral tradition about which root cures a stomachache, which leaf stops a fever, and which bark can paralyze a fish or treat a snakebite. For centuries, Western science largely dismissed this knowledge. It was viewed as primitive or unverified. But here is the plot twist. Western medicine is currently hitting a brick wall. For a long time, pharmaceutical companies relied on what we call synthetic chemistry. They would create new molecules from scratch in a lab to fight diseases. But in recent decades, their success rate has dropped. It is becoming harder and harder to invent new drugs that actually work, especially for things like antibiotic-resistant bacteria, the so-called superbugs that our current medicines can't kill. So Big Pharma is looking for a new source of inspiration, and they are realizing that the best chemist in the world isn't a guy in a white coat in Switzerland or New Jersey. The best chemist is nature itself. This brings us to the African continent. You have to realize the sheer scale of biological diversity we are talking about here. Africa creates a massive percentage of the world's biodiversity. From the rainforests of the Congo Basin to the fynbos of South Africa, there are approximately 45,000 different plant species on the continent. And here is the kicker. About 5,000 of those species are used medicinally by different indigenous groups. So imagine you are a pharmaceutical executive. You can spend billions of dollars trying to guess which random chemical molecule might cure cancer. Or you can look at a tribe in Madagascar that has been using a specific pink flower to treat illness for 500 years. The tribe has done the pre-screening for you. They know it works. You just need to figure out why. It sounds like prospecting for gold, and that is exactly what it is. But instead of gold nuggets, they are digging for molecular structures.
Let's look at a classic, somewhat tragic example to see how this used to work. Let's talk about the rosy periwinkle. This is a small plant native to Madagascar. Local healers used it for ages. In the mid-20th century, researchers from huge Western companies, specifically Eli Lilly, analyzed the plant. They isolated two alkaloids, vincristine and vinblastin. These compounds turned out to be miracle drugs. They are chemotherapy agents. They transformed the survival rate of childhood leukemia from roughly 10% to about 90%. It was a massive medical victory, and it generated hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. But here is the question. How much of that money went back to the people of Madagascar who preserved that plant and the knowledge of its power? The answer is effectively zero. At the time, there were no international laws stopping a company from taking a plant, extracting a compound, patenting it, and selling it back to the world. This brings us to the core of our topic, the patent. You might be wondering, wait, how can you patent a plant? And you are right. Generally speaking, you cannot patent a plant as it grows in the wild. You cannot patent a daisy. However, the legal systems in the US and Europe allow you to patent the process of extracting a chemical or the specific isolated molecule itself or a slight synthetic variation of that molecule. So, the pharmaceutical company says, we aren't patenting the rosy periwinkle, but the effect is the same. They own the drug. Now, why is this accelerating right now? Why are we seeing a gold rush? Part of it is technology. Robots can test thousands of plant extracts against disease cells in a single day. But the bigger reason is that African traditional medicine offers solutions to modern lifestyle diseases, things like obesity, diabetes, and anxiety. This brings us to the most famous and controversial case study of the 21st century, the Hoodia cactus. The Hoodia godoni is a succulent that looks a bit like a cactus. It grows in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. For thousands of years, the San people, one of the oldest indigenous groups on earth, used Hoodia. When they went on long hunting trips across the desert, where food and water were scarce, they would slice off a piece of Hoodia and eat it. Why? Because it stops you from feeling hungry or thirsty. It is a powerful appetite suppressant. Now, fast forward to modern times.
What is one of the biggest health crises in the Western world? Obesity. A drug that stops you from feeling hungry is the holy grail of pharmaceuticals. It is worth billions. In the 1990s, South African researchers isolated the active ingredient in Hoodia, which they called P57. They patented it. Then they licensed that patent to a British company, which then licensed it to Pfizer, the American giant. They were preparing to launch a blockbuster anti-obesity drug. But then something different happened. A South African lawyer and activist noticed this. The initial response from the researchers was shocking. They claimed the San people were extinct or that the knowledge was just general folklore. But the San were not extinct. They were living in the Kalahari, often in poverty, while a $1 billion deal was being signed based on their intellectual property. This is where the concept of biopiracy comes in. Biopiracy is when researchers take biological resources and indigenous knowledge without permission and without sharing the profits. The San people sued, and this time the world was watching. It became a massive PR disaster for the companies involved. Eventually, a landmark agreement was reached. The San Council were recognized as the comprehensive owners of the knowledge of Hoodia, and they secured a deal to receive a percentage of the royalties from future sales. This Hoodia case changed the game. It signaled to Western pharmaceutical giants that the era of smash and grab, of walking into a village, taking a plant, and leaving, is over. But let's deepen the complexity here. Why are companies still doing it if it's so risky? Because the rewards are just too high, and the patent system protects their investment. You have to understand that bringing a new drug to market costs upwards of $2 billion. Companies want a guarantee that once they spend that money, they have a monopoly. That is what a patent gives them, 20 years when no one else can sell that drug. So they are now navigating a new legal landscape. There is something you need to write down: the Nagoya Protocol. The Nagoya Protocol is an international agreement that tries to stop biopiracy. They have to sign a contract before they take the plant, promising that if it turns into a $1 billion drug, a fair share of that money goes back to the community and the country of origin.
So, to answer our main question, Western giants are patenting African medicine because it works and because they are desperate for new drugs. But the way they are doing it is shifting from theft to legally binding partnerships. At least, that is the hope. However, there is a catch. There is always a catch, right? This clashes with traditional medicine. If a healer has been using a plant for 500 years, it's not new, is it? It's ancient. Technically, if something is prior art, it cannot be patented. So if a company tries to patent a raw herbal extract that everyone in a village knows about, the patent should be denied. To get around this, companies modify the molecule slightly in the lab. They add a chemical side chain, or they change the delivery method. They turn the leaf into a nanoparticle pill. Suddenly they argue, look, this is new. This creates a tension. Is it really an invention, or just a tweak of stolen knowledge? In many African traditional systems, medical knowledge is communal. It belongs to the ancestors and the community. You don't own the cure for malaria, you are just a custodian of it. In the West, knowledge is property. It is something to be bought, sold, and fenced off. When Western giants come in, they force this capitalist structure onto a communal system. It causes conflict within the tribes. Who gets the money? The chief, the specific healer, the government? We have seen cases where these benefit-sharing deals actually caused fighting within indigenous communities because suddenly, knowledge that was free became a commodity worth millions. Let's look at one more factor driving this trend: the green consumer. You, your parents, the market. People are moving away from synthetic chemicals. We want natural products. We want organic skincare, herbal supplements, plant-based remedies. The pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries know this. They are scouring the African continent not just for cancer drugs, but for anti-aging creams using baobab oil or moisturizers using marula fruit. This leads to a conservation issue. This is a detail we cannot ignore. When a Western company patents a derivative of a plant and creates a global market for it, demand skyrockets. Suddenly, you need tons of this plant. Take Prunus africana. It's a tree also known as the African cherry. Its bark is used to treat prostate problems. It works very well. European companies patented extracts from it years ago.
The demand became so high that the trees were being stripped of their bark faster than they could regrow. The tree became endangered. So, the patenting of African medicine can actually threaten the very biodiversity it relies on. If you harvest the plant to extinction to make pills for the West, the local people lose their traditional medicine source entirely. So, where does this leave us? What is the future of this dynamic? We are seeing a shift where African scientists and governments are saying we don't just want to be the farm for Western factories. Instead of waiting for a Western company to come and validate their plants, African research institutes are running the clinical trials themselves. They are filing their own patents. They are trying to keep the value chain within Africa. But it is an uphill battle. The Western giants have the capital, the distribution networks, and the lawyers. They have the power to navigate the complex world of global intellectual property rights. To summarize, Western pharmaceutical giants are patenting African traditional medicine because 1. Their own synthetic research is failing. 2. Africa holds a largely untapped reservoir of chemical biodiversity. 3. Indigenous knowledge acts as a shortcut, saving them years of research time. 4. There is a massive global market for natural and lifestyle-related drugs. But as they do this, they are running into a new wall of ethics and international law. The days of the rosy periwinkle, where you could take a cure and leave nothing behind, are fading. The era of the Hoodia, involving lawyers, treaties, and benefit sharing, is the new reality. The next time you walk down a pharmacy aisle, look at the ingredients. If you see aloe ferox, devil's claw, or shea butter, remember the journey those ingredients took. Remember that behind that glossy package and that patent number, there is likely a lineage of traditional healers who understood the chemistry of nature long before the lab was ever built. The question for your generation will be, how do we balance the need for new life-saving drugs with the rights of the people who held the map to finding them? Is it possible to have medical progress without cultural exploitation? That is the dilemma of modern bioprospecting. Thank you for listening. I hope this gives you a completely new perspective on the medicine cabinet in your own home. See you in the next class.
If you like a story like this, consider subscribing and liking this video.